Catus Maximus here again, this time with a quick review of brass hammers and fullers. Hammers are people too. I mean, hammers are tools too. So we do need to review the full bevy of hammers that I own and kind of show people the immense variety of hammers. I've already done some sledgehammers and I've done non-metallic hammers. So now we're going to do brass and other non-ferrous materials, as well as what are considered fullers and drilling hammers. And I'm not going to get the description quite properly, but this is, for instance, this what I would consider a fuller is a fuller would be a heavy head hammer, maybe from 2 to 4 pounds, but with a proportionately shorter handle versus, say, a sledgehammer. This could be considered a short handle sledge or a fuller. They aren't exactly interchangeable, but the distinction between one or the other does get narrowed. What makes a drilling hammer is it's like a fuller except for it's curved, and then the faces are not square with the handle, but they're kind of on a curve too. And the reason it's specifically a drilling hammer is drilling in concrete used to be done manually with a bit that had 4 squares, and you'd actually use a hammer to hit, turn it a little bit, hit, turn it a little bit. And so the purpose of this hammer was so that you could get a flat strike when your hand is below the striking surface. With a standard fuller or a square or 90-degree head, if your hand is starting to get below the striking surface, it doesn't hit quite square, where this is designed to be at or a bit above the striking surface or line of what you're trying to hit, so that it does hit squarely. And so that would be what fullers and drilling hammers are. They're generally very short handle, heavy head hammers, so you can deliver a lot of inertia or a lot of force, but in a more compact area. And they're obviously very, very handy. I actually find that I use a drilling hammer as the fuller for a majority of the situations where I need to hammer a chisel. These are really nice when you're working with chisels because you're not swinging a big handle, but you have a lot of mass, so you can get a lot of work done with the chisel. This one here happens to be an Estwing, and I really like this brand of drilling hammer just because it has the nice one-piece forged head and handle. With actually, this is a more modern one, so it has a bit softer grip, nylon, and it's actually really nice. I really could recommend this one. There's a lot of nice drilling hammers and fullers, but the Estwing's definitely up there. This is a special custom-made one. It has about 1.5 pound head on with a drill rod handle. And then this one, I actually had a friend put together because I needed a hammer to work on some particular suspension components, and I just couldn't get anything else really in there. And then I figured I could use a little hammer like this, and it did work, and it's actually turned out to be pretty handy. It would be not really a fuller, but it's a mini heavy-duty steel hammer, and it's been surprisingly handy. And that's one thing I want to point out about fullers is if anybody's handy or knows people who have either machine tools or welding tools, you can certainly put together hammers. Go down to a steel shop, buy some steel rod of a particular grade, say 4140 or something, and then a appropriate grade handle and weld them together. And you can certainly make your own custom hammers, lots of times with very good high quality steels for a fraction of the price, if you're able to do it yourself. Anyway, we're moving on to brass hammers here. We have a variety of different hammers. We have a couple of professional grade ones, a Proto and an Ampco. Brass hammers and bronze hammers are all obviously for situations where you need to pound on something metal, get some gears on and off, pound in shafts and lock pins, that kind of stuff in and out, where you need a hammer that is a little bit softer, that is less likely to ding and damage, say, a steel surface or a hardened steel pin. But because they're a little bit softer, they don't quite send as much shock back through your hand either. So they actually have a couple of different advantages. There is a variety of materials and grades that they use. Some are like 360 brass, some are bronze, some have, I'm not exactly sure. And we can show a great example of that as we have this old 1 pound one here. And you can see they get really mushroomed out, and that's kind of the point. Once they get too mushroomed out, you just kind of hand file or grind off the flashing or the actual mushroom part, and you just continue to use it until you grind away too much of it. But what we can see here is this hammer has a real yellow brass on it. We can see this one, maybe up here, has a much more copper tinge to it. And same with this Proto that I've also wire brushed. So it's kind of interesting to see the different grades of materials like that. So a brass hammer isn't necessarily, or they're not all necessarily the very same grade of brass. Sometimes they're bronze. Sometimes they're like this, they're aluminum bronze. And let me actually show this one. This is a industrial service Ampco aluminum bronze hammer. This is special. These are actually pretty expensive. Ampco makes a huge variety of industrial service tools and many, many hammers through sledgehammers, but they're known for these specialty versions, whether it's large brass or non-sparking. This is the type of hammer, and along with many other tools that you'd use in an environment anytime there is any type of fire explosion hazard, whether it's gases or maybe you're doing service in a empty grain elevator. It sounds a little esoteric, but it's not that esoteric. Grain elevators and the very fine dust that's intermixed with a lot of air, same thing in sawmills, it can be a very serious fire hazard, and a lot of times striking tools are one of the biggest sources of sparks. So they make these kinds of hammers and all the other standard like ball peen, fullers, etc., but out of these special materials that you can absolutely guarantee, and these are certified, that they will not spark, no matter how hard you hit them against the hardest of steel. And it's something that you can feel confident on. This is a fairly good condition one. They do get beat up, and they are pretty expensive, but what the money that you're paying for is just a special material where you don't have to worry about starting a fire or blowing yourself up. And then Ampco really is a name that you can trust. The Proto, I can also say, has really worked out well. I bought this one used from a garage sale for, what did I pay? $20 for this thing. And it was worth every penny. It's a 2-pound. And what's interesting about their materials, this thing has really been hit. I've actually smashed it up. You can see how badly pushed in both the faces are. They've really gotten beat up, and it really doesn't mushroom that bad. That's what I found very interesting, is it kind of just mushes around, but doesn't give you the traditional mushrooming that you would find on a brass hammer like that. So I wanted to point it out that this one's the 1430G, that these Protos are really, really nice. And this is one of my go-to hammers. Nice and heavy, and you don't have to worry about dinging things up, and it really just gets the job done. I did want to point out that brass hammers are also something that are very easy to make at home, because all you need is some type of handle, and brass is super duper easy to work with. All you need to do is go down to any kind of steel supply or metal supply, get a piece of brass round, drill a hole in it, and pound a hammer or a handle into it. If you're using a wide handle like this, all you have to do is drill 2 holes side by side and just like a minute of filing because it's so soft. And then voila, you have your own brass hammer. So even ones like Harbor Freight, I don't have a Harbor Freight brass hammer, which are pretty decent for the price. It's always nice because they're so easy to make at home that you can just make a custom one. Let's say you want a really short handle or an extra long handle in whatever sizes and weights. You can make them kind of long and skinny like this, or you can make them short and squat like this 1-pounder here. These two are actually kind of what would be considered the extreme of brass hammers. I mean, as far as build quality, I got these at a flea market. I'm not exactly sure who or where they were made, and it's surprising because for how they're built, it seems incredible that there's any kind of stampings on them. But if you look at these, they're amazing. What we have here is machined aluminum handles. We actually have some type of carbon steel stems. They are magnetic. And then a pretty nice quality brass heads. And what we appear to have is a 1-pound and a 2-pound, and it's kind of subtle, but the larger one is larger in diameter and longer and is significantly heavier. One thing I did notice on these is that they are threaded, so the heads won't slip off because they're threaded, which is really nice. But that does cause what's known as a stress riser, and I would think that if they were going to thread it, that they would basically countersink the hole, so the handle would sink into the head deeper, so that part of the head actually is wrapping around this high diameter. I always kind of worry about it breaking off right at the threads. But otherwise, this is about how far they can go, where they just are entirely machined brass hammers. And I've seen a couple other tools that were made like where they were quote-unquote excessive quality, or their build quality was so high it wasn't even snap-on, it was more what you call boutique or esoteric. Usually those kind of tool companies just make certain product lines, say just hammers or something like that. And then they make small productions. A lot of times it's production on demand, i.e. they don't make 100 of them and have them sitting on the shelf. They make maybe 10, and then if they get more orders than 10, then they'll manufacture them in real time. It's the only real way that you can profitably run a business like that, because you just can't be sitting on unsold stock, so you just have to make it as it's demanded. But people do buy it, because when people see all sorts of other handles, a lot of these are great. Forged steel, high quality fiberglass, nice hardwoods. There's something to be said when you hold something that has just so many different operations and so much work that's gone into it, as opposed to some of these, although it's not easy making all the fiberglass handles and forging out these heads. It certainly isn't. The visual appeal on a brass hammer like this is certainly quite a bit. A lot of people see that and are just amazed by it and wonder how much it cost. And I just tell them, I bought them used and they don't have any stampings on them. And I haven't seen any pictures looking around at brass hammers yet, although I'm sure I will someday. And I'll add it to the description of this video. Anyway, that was the end of another video from Catus Maximus. Please do subscribe. Until next time, bye.